Many Filipinos work 9 to 5 jobs for 5 days in a week, sometimes even more. Instead of resting or spending time with loved ones during their free time, many opt to work overtime to make ends meet. However, no matter how much effort an employee puts in a job, a lot of them are not properly compensated, such is the case of Trod Texon.
I started working with the bank last February 2007 and resigned last January 2011. I worked there as a marketing assistant in the commercial loans division. One of the factors that lead me to my resignation because of, well, I think I'm undercompensated versus the workload that I do with the bank. Actually, madami namang benefits. Yung benefits naman namin, quarterly naman yung bonus. Meron din naman yung mga holiday pay, ganyan. Yung compensation, actually hindi ko na ma-remember yung kung ano sa contract. But then, usually naman pag ganun, di ba, meron kang overtime pay, dapat naka-include na yon. But with our bank kasi parang hindi nila pinapractice yon. Parang kailangan pang ipagpaalam kung mag-overtime, parang i-approve pa ng management, para meron kang bayad. Actually, yeah, trinay rin namin isabihin sa mga supervisor namin, sa mga bosses namin about it. Pero ang point nila, parang kaya naman daw gawin ng isang empleyado yung work na yon ng 8 hours, yung required na 8 hours a day. Pero ang point naman din namin, sabi namin na parang hindi naman kakayanin ng ganong oras. Siguro yung message ko sa kanila, paglaban nila or might as well erase na lang nila yung concerns nila sa HR or sa management.
What are the labor benefits or premiums employees are entitled to? When it comes to overtime pay, how is this computed? What should an employee do if he is not well compensated for his work? Good evening, I am Attorney Karen Jimeno, and you are watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News channel. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you.
And I'm Attorney Nepomuceno. Tonight, we will be discussing your legal rights on the issue of job premiums. What you need to know as to what you are entitled to as an employee and what you entitled to your employees as their employer. We will discuss this issue with a legal expert who can explain to us all about it.
Tonight, we are joined by Attorney Cecilio Duca of the Duca Law Firm. Aside from being a practicing lawyer, he is also a law professor and an author of Labor Laws and Social Legislations, a barrister's companion. Good evening, Attorney Duca.
Good evening.
Good evening, Attorney Duke. So we call you Attorney Duke. All right.
So we saw here the case of Trod Texon. And it appears that she was not paid. Well, she said she didn't feel properly compensated. But I think this is something we should clarify to our viewers. Like, what's the difference between just feeling that you're not getting enough, or as opposed to what's your entitlement sa law? So maybe this is something you can help us clarify. Let's start with una overtime pay.
Yeah.
When can they get overtime pay?
Provided the employee is not excluded, because under Article 82 of the Labor Code, there are the excluded employees. Like, for example, supervisors, managers, field personnel, and the like. Yeah. Now, if she does not belong to that group, she's entitled to overtime pay.
So Trod should first clarify, is she a managerial employee?
I think she was bank. She was handling loans. She was handling, she was
but it depends on the official classification.
Yes.
So if she's not a managerial or supervisory employee, she can get overtime pay.
She's entitled.
Yes. And what are the requirements?
Well, first of all, overtime is not a matter of right. It's a privilege that should be mutually agreed upon by the employer and the employee. So if the employer would require the employee to work overtime, that means working beyond 8 hours, the employee must agree. There are exceptions, however, in Article 89 that you can compel an employee to work under certain circumstances.
Yes. But as soon as they work that overtime, kunwari, their office for Trod, if her office hours are 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., as soon as she works up to 5:30 or 6, automatically she's entitled to overtime pay.
She's entitled.
Is this required? Do you have to have a written authority? I know there are certain rules in the labor code that require a written authority for them to proceed and be authorized to do overtime. What are those situations?
First of all, as I said, it should be a mutual agreement. No, the employer must consent to the overtime work, and the employee must also agree And therefore, there must be an authorization to perform overtime work.
Verbal? Is that I mean, for example, just the nature of the work required her to go beyond the 8 hours.
Well,
is that enough? The officer or the supervisor tells him or her, you have to work beyond.
It depends on the policy of the company. If it requires written authorization, then written authorization must be given.
It depends on the policy.
And then the rate for overtime pay is how much? For instance, for Trod?
It depends. If you perform overtime work on a regular day, it's normally 25% of the regular rate per hour.
Yeah, any regular day. Okay.
Yes, if it falls on a regular holiday or special holiday or rest day, then it should be 30% of the regular rate per hour.
Yes.
Okay.
Sige. Just to...
Now, when you say regular rate, you're talking just about the cash component of the salary, right?
The basic wage.
Yeah. So you
Siguro just to clarify to our viewers and to Trod, if she's watching right now, what Attorney Duca is explaining is that, for instance, if your rate per hour, your regular wage for the day is 100 pesos, then you're entitled to 25% of that as soon as you work beyond 8 hours. So you'll get 125 pesos per hour.
Not necessarily, because 100 pesos per day, then you have to divide that by 8 because you
divided
work
by 8 hours.
Yes.
Okay. So 100 pesos divided by 8 times 25% is what you'll get for every hour or fraction
beyond 8 hours.
Of
so
hour.
times in fact, times 1.25.
1.25.
Yeah, that's
yes.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. Now,
and then last question: if she really found out that she wasn't paid for overtime or holiday, how can she claim this? Because she already resigned.
She is no longer employed, then she can go to the Department of Labor Regional Office and file money claims under Article 129 of the Labor Code. But she has to do that within 3 years.
Okay, so Duca, make sure you do it within 3 years from the time you resigned, because she mentioned she resigned 2011.
2011, yeah. So
well, it's still a prescriptive
still
period.
within. All right.
Okay, let's answer a few questions from our viewers. Our first question is from Tere, and she asks via Twitter, can an employer force an employee to come to work during holidays? Okay,
yes, based on the circumstances as may be provided by law, and dependent also on the CBA between the employer and the union.
CBA meaning collective bargaining agreement.
So the employer can require. What are those situations? What are those?
Well, if there are certain emergency, then there's a need to continue working to take advantage of a favorable working condition.
And I think if life and death is involved,
emergencies, But then if there's no emergency, the general rule is that you cannot be compelled to work on a holiday.
Yes.
Right?
So
the only consequence would be if you do allow yourself to, you allow yourself to work on a holiday, then you're allowed to get additional compensation.
Yes, that's right. Now, okay, our next question is from Charles, and he asks via Twitter, I work for a company whose work hours demand more than 8 hours, but I don't think the pay is adequate. Should I demand for additional pay to my salary? Now, this is a tricky question because he seems to be questioning the adequacy of his pay and not so much the fact that he has to work beyond 8 hours. I think the general rule here, Attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, is that if it's beyond 8 hours, and he falls within the parameters of the law, he is entitled to overtime pay. About the adequacy of his pay, that seems to be a totally different
story, because we have the regional wage board as provided by law that it fixes the minimum wage per region.
Yeah, so basically if he's being paid less than that, then
he can file a complaint.
Then he can file a complaint. All right, there you go.
Okay, our third question comes from Valerie via Facebook. She asks, what is night shift differential and who are entitled to it? Are call center agents one of them?
Definitely, because under Article 86 of the Labor Code, if
call center agents,
if the employer employs more than 5 workers, then they are entitled to night shift differential pay.
Yes.
Night shift differential is paid, which is 10% of the regular rate for a work done from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. the following day.
Even if this is part of their regular working hours, right?
Yes.
So basically, if you have overtime and then you're getting paid 25%, then you reach the point of 10 p.m. So that's 25 plus
10%.
Okay,
plus
there you go.
10% pa, yes.
All right.
So for those who are call center agents, kunwari they really have to go to work at 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., then that's automatically 10% more
Plus
dapat,
10%,
diba, of
yes.
the regular wage.
That's right. Okay, now Mike naman asks us via Facebook, how do you compute for overtime pay, holiday pay? Is there a formula we can use to compute it for ourselves to see if it is being followed? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Basically, let us
Yeah.
dissect the question.
Yeah.
There are so many issues
Yeah,
there. First of all, you have to
Let's start with regular
regular
days.
holiday.
Oh, regular days.
Regular
Yung
days
na OT
typical
pay.
Monday to Friday, for
Na
instance.
OT,
Oo,
overtime.
tapos
Okay.
nag-overtime ka.
Okay. Regular day, you have 25% for
Yes.
any work beyond 8 hours.
Okay. So,
So-
para madali. For if your wage that day is 800 pesos per day, then you divide that by 8 hours, so 100 per
pesos.
hour ka technically. Tapos,
Plus
for instance, if
25%.
you work beyond your 8 hours, that's already
125.
times, yes, 100
pesos.
pesos times 25%, your additional
Yes.
125 pesos, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then
And then
next
for
would be
mga
holiday.
regular holidays. Yeah.
For regular holiday under Article 94, if the employee does not work, he's entitled to 100% of the regular wage.
Okay, so we talk about regular holidays, we talk about mga legal holidays, right?
Christmas, yeah.
Christmas,
Yeah,
ganun.
New Year, Independence
Also,
Day,
Yeah.
Labor
even
Day.
Eid al-Fitr,
Idul
is a
Fitr
regular
and
holiday.
Idul Adha.
Yan.
Idul
So,
Adha.
so now that's if he didn't work. Now if he
didn't
worked,
work. If he works, then he receives 200%.
200%.
Oh, so in our example, if you're getting 800 pesos as your daily wage, pag hindi ka pumasok on a regular
800.
holiday like Christmas, you're still supposed to get 800 pesos. And then if you work on that day, then you get
1,600.
1,600 pesos. Tapos pag mag-overtime ka pa,
That's 30% of
times
1,600.
1,600. So
30%
more-
of the 200%.
Yes.
Now we have to clarify yung difference between regular holidays and special holidays.
Yes,
Diba?
yes.
Kasi if they didn't work on a special holiday, and when we talk about special holidays, we're talking about the December
All Souls
20
Day. All Souls Day is a
Okay,
December
special
24,
working holiday.
December
No, no.
24.
No, that's a regular holiday.
There are three special holidays under the law, no? Republic Act 9492.
Last day of the year.
Last day of the
Yeah.
year,
Yeah.
All Souls Day, and Monday nearest August 21.
The Monday near
That's-
August
that's
21.
Ninoy
Aquino
So those are the
Day.
three.
Yes.
Yes.
So those special holidays, if you did not work,
No pay.
No pay.
No work, no pay is
Alright.
the policy.
and then if you worked,
Then you get additional premium pay of 30%.
30%. So again, kung 800 pesos a day ka, then 800 times 30%, you get an additional 240 pesos, no?
Yes.
Ayan.
Okay.
Alright.
So let's take a short break. Legal Help Desk will return after these reminders. You are still watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News channel. We are still joined by Attorney Cecilio Duca.
Okay, let's answer a few more questions from our viewers with the help of Attorney Duke. All right. We have a Facebook question from Abdul. All right. And he asks, I am a Muslim working for a non-Muslim corporation. During Muslim holidays, can I be excused from work to observe these holidays? Would it affect my overall salary if I were absent from work? I think there are specific laws on this. No?
Yes, yes. An employee is entitled to regular rest day every week.
Right.
Now, the fixing of rest day would be included in the consideration is the religious belief of a person. Now, let's say, for example, a Muslim would prefer a rest day on a Friday because he has to attend to his religious duties, then it should be considered by the employer.
Yes, but in this case as well, he's asking if I have to work on a Muslim holiday, then can I be excused from work? And I think the answer is yes, diba?
Yes.
Yeah,
For Muslims, you are not required to go to work. It's considered a regular holiday as well,
Yeah.
right?
Basically, our laws now consider the Muslim holidays as regular holidays. Like, for example, the end of Ramadan, which is Eid al-Fitr, and their day for sacrifice, which is Eid al-Adha. These are
Yes.
Muslim holidays, which are now regular holidays.
Yes.
So, what
and
if-
Abdul, just to add, this applies even if you work for a non-Muslim
Yes.
corporation. So if they're forcing you to work on those days, then you're entitled to 200% of your regular wage.
Now, this is a far-off question, but basically, if you're part of a religion where the usual rest day is not on a Sunday,
Yes.
and then you say, okay, let's say Monday is your day of worship. I think there's some sects like that.
Yes,
Can you invoke that and
Yes.
say, so every week you're
Yes,
free on Monday?
yes.
Ah,
Instead of working on a Sunday,
Yeah.
you get your rest day on that particular day because religious freedom is a constitutional
But
right.
then if he has to work on that rest day, kunwari ang pinili niyang rest day is Monday because of his religion, and then he ends up working on that day, the additional pay would be
30%.
30%.
I see.
Okay.
All right. Now, can he then say? Can the employer then say, all right, I'll move it. If, for example, if you're working on a particular day, no, if this with respect to the employer, no, and then you tell the employer, no, you can just take a leave on another day. Is that possible so that I don't have to pay overtime pay?
Well,
For example,
that's possible if there are circumstances which are beyond the control of the employees, and those circumstances are listed in Article 92 of the Labor Code.
all right. Okay. Now let's go to our next question. Amy asks us via Twitter, how can I be entitled for 2 holiday pays ba? Gusto niya mag 2 holidays. Okay. Double benefit.
There are
Is there-
instances
are
when
there instances? Oh,
yes, there are instances when 2 holidays would fall on the same day. Like for example, Araw ng Kagitingan, which is April 9, somehow it falls on a Monday, Thursday, or Good Friday. Now, the rule, according to the Department of Labor, as affirmed by the Supreme Court in that case of Asian Transmission versus Court of Appeals, then if the employee does not work, she receives 200%.
200%, yes.
But if the employee works, she receives 300% only.
Okay.
No, there's a rule also that the day before you should
Should be
be
present.
not up. You should be present.
Present.
Right? Why is that? Ano yung what is there any policy? Or why do you have to be present the day before?
Well, it presupposes that the employee must be diligent enough because somehow it is in our culture that if tomorrow is a holiday, I would be absent today. So to prevent that from
To prevent that
happening.
from
So
happening.
that's for our viewers, that's
Yeah.
important to know. No? If you want to get the regular holiday pay, meaning kunwari Christmas, gusto niyo makuha yung sweldo niyo for that day even if you don't go to work, you have to go to work on the 24th
Day before.
para entitled kayo doon. Or you have to be on leave with pay.
Leave with
Yes.
pay. Yeah.
Okay, our next question comes from Edward, and he asks via Facebook, as a boss, how can I make sure that my employees are not abusing their privileges or premiums, such as overtime pay or holiday pay? Okay, interesting question. Kasi nga naman, diba, as soon as you work beyond 8 hours, kunwari, up to 5 p.m. lang yung trabaho mo, if you're in the office up to 5:30 or 6, you're automatically entitled to overtime pay.
Yes.
I've had office mates before na nagsistay para lang makuha yung meal allowance. So, what measures can employers do naman? Can they implement, is it allowed under the law if they implement, for instance, that a formal notice and approval na if you're gonna work overtime, you have to approve it?
Yes, that's part of management prerogative
Okay.
in order to control the means and method by which the employee will perform the task.
Okay, so maybe, Edward, that's what you can do. Have like an official slip or
Overtime form, yeah.
authorization form, na
Yeah.
overtime pay, overtime authorization form, so that employees can't stay
Yeah.
na wala naman palang ginagawa,
Yeah.
no, and get the overtime pay. Or holiday pay,
Holiday
maybe.
pay.
Kung hindi naman sila kailangan, they have to ask maybe an authorization to work on those days.
Now, yun nga, if they feel that the employer is taking advantage of them and basically insisting, oh, you have to finish that work, you have to finish that work. It's the nature of your job that you have to finish your work. but they feel that they're really forced to do overtime, they go to what particular division of the Department of Labor?
It depends if the establishment is organized, meaning there is a union and they have their collective bargaining, then they could go to their grievance machinery, and then thereafter voluntary arbitration. Now, if there is no union, meaning there is no collective bargaining agreement, then probably the Department of Labor regional office could help. The senatorial power of the regional director.
I see, okay. All right, we have another question coming from John via Facebook. And he asks, okay, if I have a special requirement that I require workers to work away from their regular work area, only for the weekend, for example, and from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., including overtime, are they entitled to overtime pay if they are not capable of returning home? So, for example, a concrete example, I have a project in Corregidor, for example, and I would then require my team to go to Corregidor. Now, the boat, the ferry from Corregidor only comes back 2 p.m. That's the last ferry from Corregidor to Manila. But their job requires them to stay till 5 p.m., which means that they can't return to Manila, and they'll have to stay overnight in Corregidor. Do I have to pay them overtime pay?
Well, general rule, you have to, because this is integral part of their task.
Until next day.
Yes.
So see, John, who's asking this on Facebook, medyo mahal pala for him, no? Yeah, that's something you can consider, John, if it makes sense to keep your employees away for that weekend, no? Yes.
So that's very important.
And unfortunately, we are running out of time, but let's take a few last minutes by giving a quick recap. First, it's important to distinguish between regular holidays and special holidays. So it pays to know the holidays. Kasi again, if it's a special holiday like Ninoy Aquino Day or just All Souls Day, if you don't show up for work, you don't get paid. But then if it's a regular holiday like New Year or yung holy days, no, like Holy Thursday, Good Friday, then if you don't show up for work, you still should get your salary for that day, and then if you work, you should get twice. Bale,
20%.
whatever your salary is, kunwari 500 pesos a day, times 2, 1,000 pesos.
Yeah.
And then
well, that's...
what about, recap on overtime?
Overtime pay. For example, I just have one question. This is part of the recap. And if you're already providing a benefit, a cash benefit to your employees, let's say you give them per dimes or any kind of allowances, which go beyond the mandatory overtime pay. Are you still required to give overtime pay? I mean, that's mandated by law?
Well, general rule, yes, but it could be negotiated depending on the collective bargaining agreement of the employees and the employer.
But if there's no collective bargaining agreement,
then you have to pay overtime pay.
You have to pay overtime pay. Okay.
And then, of course, for our friends or viewers who work in call centers or night shifts, you're entitled to what's called a night shift differential pay, meaning it should be 10% more of the regular wage if you're working between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., even if this is your regular job. So, don't forget, but there are some who are not covered by this law, katulad ng mga government employees, including yung nasa mga government-owned corporations, and managerial employees are also not covered, right? And also for establishments who employ less than 5 employees.
I think cooperatives as well, but except
provided
for
their members.
They're members of the cooperative, they're not covered by overtime pay. But if they're hired by the cooperative, let's say as employees, then they're covered.
And Attorney Duca, maybe parting words, if they're not getting all of these overtime pay, holiday pay, where can they go to ask for help?
Well, they have to report that, file complaints with the regional office of the Department of Labor and Employment.
Okay.
All right.
That's very helpful.
All right. That's all the time we have left. I would like to thank our guest for tonight, Attorney Duca, for joining us tonight and explaining your rights on job premiums. I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. Join us again next Monday as we talk about your legal rights on the issue of adoption. Good night.